Continuing on our journey around the eastern Kazakhstan city of Semey, we've come to this museum that you can see behind me. It's a fantastic place, a building that was constructed in the mid-19th century, around about the 1870s, by a local businessman and philanthropist called Fyodor Stepanov. It wasn't originally like that. He built it like a palace, and there was a gateway in there through which his horses could go. The museum is named after this man behind me. This is Joly Nevzorov, and he was a collector of art for a very long time. He was actually an engineer. He was a civil engineer who specialized in the building of bridges, and he lived in Russia, in Irkutsk, and also in Moscow. Now, he had a great interest in art that didn't just start with him. His whole family for many generations had collected masterpieces and other pieces of art from across Russia and the Soviet Union. Joly Nevzorov is no longer with us. He died 2 or 3 years ago at the ripe old age of 97, but he has relatives who are still alive and who still have a great connection with this museum, and we're going to go and have a look at his connection now. The museum's art collection is split into different periods, different sources of art, because the collection is very big. There's actually over 5,000 pictures just in this one small museum. In this particular room that we're in at the moment, all of these are from European artists of the 17th, 18th and 19th centuries. These are pieces of art that have been bought by the museum for the collection. These weren't donated. And these provide the contrast to the other pieces of art that were donated, to show the development of art over the different periods, and not just the development, but also the types of different art to contrast them from different places. So, as we go through into this next hall here, all of these pieces of art were donated by Nevzorov. Well, this isn't his whole collection, of course. He donated 567 pieces of art to this museum, and they're spread throughout the museum in different areas. But all of these are by Russian artists of the 18th and 19th centuries. I want to show you one piece of art over here. This is a very important piece of art from pre-revolution Russia. And this was actually found almost in a skip, just as a piece of rubbish, because at some point in time somebody had cut this out of a larger painting just to sell it because they needed some money. However, Nevzorov knew of its existence and he wanted to get this, and eventually he found it. And it was the kind of a boot sale sort of arrangement. It's a very valuable piece of art, a very beautiful piece of art, and now it belongs to this museum in Semey. The museum's exhibits represent an eclectic range of styles, subject matter, artists, eras and places of origin. Despite the museum having paintings from many sources other than Nevzorov's collection, it nonetheless reflects the art enthusiast's taste for diversity. This one is by the famous Russian artist Bogolubov, and he created this one. It's a landscape of Venice. Down in the corner here it says Rome. That's where he finished it off. He signed the picture when he was in Rome, when he was finishing off the detail. And the detail is incredible. If we look at this, if we look at the ripples within the water, you can see the kind of detail that's gone into the painting of this. There's the harsh light of the moon creating the atmosphere on the left-hand side of the painting. And then down here, you've got this soft orange glow giving this cozy atmosphere to the cafes and the areas down by the dock. All of that contrast, all of that beauty, just in one single picture. It's amazing. This museum's full of these kind of halls. They're very big, very grand. They have these very comfortable seats down the centre so that you can sit there and look at the walls and admire all the pictures that are down each side. They're huge, these rooms, and you can see this delicious parquet flooring, very nice indeed. And at the end here there's a grand piano, which is something that Stepanov brought from St. Petersburg to this place. He used to use it for performing concerts, for charity concerts here, and now It's still operational, but it's here as more of an exhibit. There's art here from throughout Russia. There's very famous artists. There are less famous artists, but they all have the same beauty about them. The long galleries in the Nevzorov Museum are connected by a well-organized chain of smaller galleries, each revealing more absorbing artistic treasures, culminating in a gallery dedicated to Kazakhstan's artists. Local artists from modern times are also represented in the broad galleries, including 3 fascinating works of art commissioned in the new millennium to represent the newly independent country. The small city of Semey in the northeast of Kazakhstan has a checkered history stretching back to its origin as a Russian fortification in the early 18th century. Its earlier name of Semipalatinsk was derived from the words 7 chambers, a reference to a monastic building sited on the banks of the Irtysh River. In 1776, the Russian Empire built a fort here at Semey for the Cossack soldiers. And what you can see behind me is one of the 4 gates that were in the walls of the fort to allow the soldiers to come in and out. These gates were on 4 of the walls, each in a cardinal direction. This is the westerly gate that's pointing out towards the city of Pavlodar. Well, the gate was discovered a long time ago, of course, but they had to build a railway directly through the position where it was, and they reconstructed it and brought it in nearer to the town, and this is what you can see there. The original name of Semipalatinsk was changed in 2007 to Semey, a move to rid the city's association with the Soviet nuclear testing range and to provide a more visible link to the culture of Kazakhstan. From the moment that the Russians first arrived here, things began to change dramatically. You know, Kazakhstan has always been a very multinational country, and there was nations coming into the place at that particular time. So at that time the culture began to change quite radically. You can see behind me, this is the kind of environment that the nomadic Kazakhs used to live in, and all of that began to disappear in this particular region of Kazakhstan around Semipalatinsk. And one of the reasons for that was this insurge of culture of a different kind, and it had a very big effect on the lives of people who lived here. Well, you can see by the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, things had changed to this. We've come away from the yurt kind of dwellings to this kind of rich setting which people aspired to at that time. You can see all of this imported furniture, these beautiful carved wood dressing tables, rocking chairs, benches, the samovar, all the riches that people wanted at that time. And that was quite specific at that time to this area because it was close to Russia. There was a lot of culture that was coming into the area at that time, and a lot of imported furniture, pianos, the musical instruments, the wall clocks, that kind of thing. And it gave people the hope to have a better future and a life that included these kind of luxurious items. Now the town of Semey has come on an awful lot since those days in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. It's renowned now for being a very industrial town and an educational town with universities here and industry from all different angles. There's the railway hub here where they transport in materials from all different parts of the country and from other countries to support the manufacturing industry here, which is very strong. They have tractor building plants, building buses. They also build other agricultural machinery here, and they have a big industry in food, pharmaceuticals, all sorts of products that you might need for the kitchen as well. Great names of literature and philosophy are tightly linked to the city, which had great cultural significance in the 19th and early 20th centuries. The great Kazakh writer and philosopher, Abay Kunembayev, is strongly associated with the city, as well as his biographer, Mukhtar Awezov. The Russian writer, Fyodor Dostoevsky, was exiled to Semipalatinsk, where he developed his friendship with the ethnographer Shokan Valikhanov. The city continues to proudly nurture these associations and is home to a number of museums and monuments in their honour. This magnificent suspension bridge that you can see behind me crosses the Irtysh River here in Semipalatinsk. Well, it was constructed 12 years ago, 2001, and it was done in order to take away some of the load from the other bridge that's further up the river, because there was just too much traffic. You can see the volume of traffic now, and this is a quiet time, is quite high, and it's a strategic route. It's a very important route through here. But there's something special about this bridge. It's a suspension bridge, and it takes 17th place in the world in terms of the suspended mass, and it's actually the third bridge in the world that is made of this kind of construction. It's an extremely complex construction, and there's only 3 bridges like it in the world. There's one here that crosses the Irtysh, there's another one in San Francisco, and there's another one in Europe. Well, the architects were Japanese. They also employed Turkish building companies and local building companies from Kazakhstan to build it. And it's a very important and strategic part of the town of Semey. With a length of over 1 kilometre and a central span measuring 750 metres, the modern structure of the suspension bridge across the Irtysh River is a dominating and inspiring architectural splash across the skyline, and designed to carry increasing volumes of traffic from one side of the city to the other, well into the future. Well, you can see that we're in the most popular park in the town of Semey, and this alley down here has been beautifully decorated with all of these flowers. You can see children are playing here, people are walking around. It's used for all sorts of things. People on their usual wedding tours after they've got married come to this park and walk down this alleyway here. You can see that behind me there's a couple of monuments. Well, the area of Semipalatinsk, as it used to be called before it changed to Semey, was notorious because of the nuclear testing range during the Soviet Union. This was something that Kazakhstan decided to get rid of completely in 1991. They threw out all of the nuclear weapons, they stopped testing, and they vowed that they would only ever use nuclear power for peaceful purposes. However, before that there were a lot of victims to those testing experiments that went on, and the monument behind me that looks very dark and forbidding is the monument to those victims. The other monument that you can see, which is right at the end of the alley, is much more optimistic, and actually you can see the optimism in the monument itself. It thrusts up into the sky, it's capped in gold, and it's telling us about the future, a future that's extremely bright. These terrible things that happened here are never going to happen again, and the people of Semey, the people of Kazakhstan, have got an extremely bright future. And in fact, on this site, they're going to build a museum of peace. And this museum to peace is going to be surrounding the whole nuclear industry, looking at the things that have happened and how nuclear energy can be used for peaceful purposes in the future. Constructed as a high-profile statement of Kazakhstan's nuclear-free future, the Peace Island is a serene area of parkland punctuated by 2 structures, one of which commemorates those who became victims of the Soviet nuclear program, and one which celebrates a nuclear-free future for the city's subsequent generations. Well, we've discovered many of the secrets of this very historic town of Semey in the Eastern Kazakhstan region. Very interesting place, very rich history, stretching all the way back to the 18th century. Well, there's a lot more to discover in the Eastern Kazakhstan region, and we'll be covering more of it next time in Discovering Kazakhstan. Goodbye.